I'm Dr. Naika from the Nutrition Division of the Ministry of Health. I'm a consultant community physician, and today we have a session 5 of the Adolescent and Youth Health module, and that is nutrition and the healthy diet for adolescents and youth. And this lecture is aimed at explaining the importance of nutrition and diet for adolescents and youth, and we need to know about the basic concepts of nutrition before we talk about the importance of nutrition and diet for adolescents. So, those are nutrition, nutrients, food groups and diet, and the main nutrients of healthy diet also we need to identify, and to explain the recommended food groups for Sri Lankan is the other objective of this lecture. And at the end of the lecture, we need to gain a knowledge on planning balanced diet using dietary recommendations, and considering the characteristics of an unhealthy diet and its consequences. Also, we need to consider about measures that could be taken to promote healthy eating. So, as I said earlier, there are basic concepts in nutrition, that those are nutrients, food groups, balanced diet and healthy eating. And we need to think before we explain about the importance of adolescent and youth nutrition. What is the importance of this nutrition among adolescents and adolescents? So, that is we know that at this age is the age where they establish most of the nutrition habits, and onset of nutrition related chronic diseases in adult life established at this age. So, we need to concern about that, and also we need to address adolescent specific nutrition issues and existing nutritional issues among adolescents and youth has to be corrected before they step into the adulthood. And this age, especially adolescents, is the window of opportunity for nutrition habits. So, this is the period they adapt and establish dietary habits for the adult life, as I said earlier, and improvement of their dietary patterns and dietary behaviors is an investment in adult health. And we know that it is very easy to capture population adolescents, because most of the adolescents are in the schools, and we think and also youth, most of them are in educational institutes and some of them in workplaces. So, we need to reach them, and through we can use them as change agents. To change the dietary behaviors of families and community members. What are the when you do these presentations, you can have you have to identify with the participants the responsibilities of the society towards improving nutritional status of the adolescent. That is one of the activities in this session, and you can do that in VIPP cards, using the VIPP cards, and ask them to write down those things. And now we will see what the basic concepts of nutrition. And first of all, we need to identify what is nutrition. We know that we take food in, and after that it is digested, and after digestion that is absorbed into our body and utilized as nutrients. That is all about the nutrition. And we need, if we need to have a good nutrition, we need to get adequate and diversified diet, well balanced diet. and that is the one cornerstone of good health when combined with the regular physical activity. And also poor nutrition. If we take inadequate amounts of diet and also not a balanced diet, then it will lead to reduced immunity. Especially these days, we know that we need to keep our immunity up, and we will talk about it later. So we need to poor nutrition will lead to reduced immunity, and also in turn people will susceptible to disease. Impaired physical and mental development also happens due to poor nutrition among adolescents and youth also, and in their productivity, especially educational performance and work performance, will be reduced. So, what are the nutrients? Nutrients are the substances that provide energy and helps growth, and not only that, to support, to maintain our bodily functions. These substances are helpful for us. Then nutrients can be divided into macronutrients, which we need in larger amounts, like as we already know that macronutrients are carbohydrates, proteins and fat, and also some minerals, but which are needed in large amounts. We call them macrominerals, and water, and also micronutrients. Thus, we need only in small amounts or the minute amounts. Those are usually vitamins and microminerals, which we need in small amount. And we call antioxidants, which fights with the free radicals. And moving on to the diet. What is diet? Is what we usually or the regularly we eat is our diet. So we can say food and drink consumed by an individual regularly, or the kinds of food that a person, animal or community habitually eats. And moving on to the main nutrients of a healthy diet after identifying all the basic concepts. And we talked about the macronutrients, which we require in large amounts, and they constitute a bulk of our diet. And also they are carbohydrates, fats and proteins are interchangeable sources of energy in our diet. And therefore we need to identify how much energy they give. By consuming 1 gram of carbohydrates or proteins, we get 4 kilocalories. And on the other hand, when we consume fats, we get more energy, that is 9 kilocalories for 1 gram consumed. And talking about the carbohydrates, we know that from our school days that carbohydrates, basic structure of it is a sugar molecule, and according to the number of sugar molecules, we get simple carbohydrates or the complex carbohydrates. Simple carbohydrates also can divide, if they have only one sugar molecule, it is called monosaccharide. Usually we know that about the glucose, and sometimes 2 molecules, we call that disaccharides. And examples are maltose, fructose and sucrose. Sucrose, we know that 2 molecules of glucose, and maltose, lactose and the glucose. So, galactose is the lactose and the glucose. And also complex carbohydrates, they have more than 2 sugar molecules, and we have digestible complex carbohydrates like starches, and also fibers which are non-digestible, but they have a special function in our body to improve our bowel functions. And recommended daily intake of carbohydrate is when we calculate our calorie intake for the day, it differs from person to person, from age to age group to age, different age groups, and also for different sexes, and also depending on the activity level of the person, it differs. But anyway, we have to take carbohydrate at least 55% of the calorie intake required for the day. And usually it is equivalent to at least 130 grams of carbohydrates per day for a sedentary adult person. And when we talk about carbohydrate, we always come through this concept, glycemic index. It shows how rapidly consumption of a carbohydrate increases plasma glucose levels. And usually glycemic index ranks from 0 to 100, and we get three types of glycemic index: low, medium, and high glycemic index. Low glycemic index, which is 55 or less, glycemic index foods are called low glycemic index, and they are slowly digested and absorbed. Usually they contain fiber like fruits or brown rice or the bran cereals or the whole grain cereals we call, and those things reduces absorption of sugars as well as cholesterols, these low glycemic index foods. And high glycemic foods are quickly absorbed, quickly digested and absorbed. Those are usually refined cereals, maybe white bread or the refined fully milled rice and their products, milled wheat and their products, and also fruit juices and sugary beverages. They have the high glycemic index, and they increases blood glucose quickly. And when you do the deliver your lecture, you can ask those participants, adolescents or youth, to identify foods under each of the nutrient groups: proteins, carbohydrates, fats, vitamins and minerals. That is one of the activity in this session. And moving on to the protein are nitrogen containing organic compounds, and their building blocks are called amino acids. We know that about 20 amino acids are in our body to help support us grow and function properly. And amino acids also divided into essential amino acids and non-essential amino acids. Non-essential amino acids are synthesized in our body, but essential amino acids we need to get from the food, as they are not synthesized in the body. And they have a very important function in our body, in our system. So there are 9 essential amino acids like histidine, isoleucine, leucine, lysine, methionine, phenylalanine, threonine, and tryptophan and valine. And they have different roles in the body, and we need to get them every day to for proper functioning and development also, and for the growth. And what are the functions of proteins? Proteins usually helps us to grow and also to maintain our tissues and replace damaged tissues, and varying tissues are replaced by proteins. And functioning of the body also properly with the presence of adequate hormones, neurotransmitters and enzymes. So for production of hormones, neurotransmitters and enzymes, we need proteins. And as we said earlier, that we need proteins gives us 4 kilocalories of energy when we consume 1 gram, and that happens usually in the absence of enough calories in our diet. And stored proteins in our tissues are depleted at that moment. So, our recommended daily allowance is 0.8 gram of protein per kilogram body weight, and that is 15 to 20% of total energy intake we need to take from as proteins. And then moving on to the fats, next third main macronutrient, it is fats. We know that fats are type of nutrient that is obtained from the diet, and fats we call usually solid ones, and oils we call liquid ones, and collectively we call them lipids, and they are the mixture of fatty acids. Fatty acids are the building blocks of lipids, and these fatty acids or the fats divided into saturated and unsaturated fatty acids, and they have different roles in our health. And also when talking about the intake, how much we have to take fats for daily requirement, that is 25% to 30% of the total energy intake we should take from fats. But there are different functions in dietary fats. It is usually 1 gram of fat gives 9 kilocalories, as I explained earlier. That fat gives more than carbohydrates and proteins, and it is essential for absorption of fat soluble vitamins, especially vitamin A, D, E and K, which is needed for our immune system and also to prevent diseases and many other functions. Those vitamins are those vitamins and without fat it cannot be absorbed into the body. And also fat, when we have fats in the body, it keeps us warm, and also healthy hair and skin is also one of the functions of the fat. And fats not only the healthy option, when we eat, when we consume food, it gives us a good texture and a flavor to our food and increasing the appetite. And as I said earlier, we need to take 25 to 30% of daily energy intake from fats. And when we talk about fats, I already said that there are two types of fats, saturated and unsaturated. Saturated ones are mostly solids at room temperature, like cheese, butter, and also coconut oil also has most of the content of the coconut oil is fats. Then these fats, when we take more in excess, that it increases LDS or LDL cholesterol or the low density lipoproteins, or we call them bad cholesterol, and it is a heart unhealthy fats. So we need to take in a limited amount. And this saturated fat also reduces insulin sensitivity and leading to diabetes mellitus in later life. And unsaturated fat, on the other hand, helps to increase high density lipoproteins or the good cholesterol. Unsaturated fats, we divide them into monounsaturated fat or the fatty acids or the MUFA, and we get them from avocados, nuts such as cashew nuts, peanuts and kottan in Sri Lanka, and oil seeds such as sesame, pumpkin oils, and also those oils from those seeds. And then next unsaturated fatty acid is PUFA or the polyunsaturated fatty acids. And we heard about omega-3, and that is one of the polyunsaturated fatty acid, and it contains in oily fish like mackerel, we call them bolla or kumbalawa, and tuna, that is balaya and kelawalla, and herring, that is Hurulla, like Sardinella, pink salmon, tofu and soybeans also contains those things, with the sunflower oil, corn oil and some of the oils, soybean oil and gingerly oil. So those are the sources of omega-3 fatty acids. And we know that we need to have a balance of omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids for our health. So that is polyunsaturated, those are polyunsaturated fatty acids, and omega-6 is mainly in plant origin, and while omega-3 is from mainly from the fish. Omega-6 can be obtained from corn, seeds such as sesame, pumpkin and their oils, and also in some extent eggs and meat also has these omega-6 fatty acids. Yeah, saturated fatty acids, as we said that it's unhealthy for the heart, so we should limit them to less than 10% of the total daily energy intake. And even sources of saturated fatty acids are milk and dairy products, meat and meat products, and coconut milk also contain coconut milk, coconuts and coconut oil has saturated fat, and also palm oil, so we need to limit them. And hidden saturated fats are found in most of the bakery products, as they contain a lot of margarines and things like those are with high saturated fatty acid contents, and also fried foods and chocolates contain saturated fat. That is why we have to limit them. Saturated fats in excess amount, and also industrial fat trans fats, I will explain that later, increases bad cholesterol and heart unhealthy. So those are unhealthy fats. So saturated fat consumption should be limited, especially by those who are at risk of developing non-communicable diseases, especially in those who have the close relatives who with diabetes mellitus, hypertension, or who got strokes. They have to limit these things for better health. And when we talk about, I said that trans fats are unhealthy. When trans fats are in our some food like meats, all naturally present in meats, those are we call ruminant trans fats, but those are not unhealthy. But industrial trans fats, we always say it is unhealthy, because those are the unsaturated fats exposed to high temperatures. Though unsaturated fats are healthy, when those are exposed to high temperatures, or in the industries, they usually exposed to process cooled hydrogenation or the partial hydrogenation to prepare some milk from milk to hard margarines and all. So those industrial trans fats are unhealthy, because they causes plaques in our blood vessels, cholesterol plaques, and we may get cardiovascular accidents and cerebrovascular accidents such as strokes. So industrial trans fats are unhealthy, we said, as they raise low density lipoproteins, or the LDL, or bad cholesterol, and they lower good cholesterol levels. So because of that, these industrial trans fats are unhealthy. And when moving on to the other nutrients, we need to about the micronutrients. Micronutrients mostly we have to take from the diet. They are very much less produced in our body. So these deficiencies of micronutrients can cause devastating health consequences, and especially when we know about the iron causes anemia, iodine deficiency disorders causing mental retardedness, and vitamin A and folate, zinc, all these things causes low immunity. So, micronutrient deficiencies are not apparent like macronutrient deficiencies, because when macronutrient deficiencies are there, we can see them thin or the obese people or the overweight people, but here not apparent much. So, then because of that, those micronutrient deficiencies are called hidden hunger, and micronutrients prevent and control the hidden hunger. So, we call it a magic wands in our diets. And micronutrients are vital for development and disease prevention and our well-being. And when we talk about the vitamins are organic compounds that required in very small quantities, but they have a big role in our life to maintain our life and also to prevent diseases. Most of the vitamins we obtain from our diet, and very few are partially produced by the body. And we know that there are 13 known vitamins like vitamin A and group of vitamin B's and vitamin C, D, E and K. So those are non-vitamins in up to now, and also micronutrients. When we talk about the micronutrients, there are minerals which helps us to maintain our bodily functions as well as to maintain our immunity. There are two types of them, as I said earlier, to macrominerals, which we have to take from as in large quantities, and also trace minerals which we need to require only in minute quantities. Then when we talk about the macro minerals, we know that calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, sodium, potassium, chloride and sulfur, those things are in our body structures especially, and need for day-to-day activities, very much needed for day-to-day activities, and we require them in large quantities, and we have to obtain them through a balanced diet. And trace minerals we need only in minute quantities, and those are iron, manganese, copper, iodine, zinc, cobalt, fluoride and selenium are some of the trace minerals which we need to function and be healthy. These trace minerals are needed in daily diet, and they too are usually obtained through a balanced diet. So we need to know about all the micronutrients. We talked about all the nutrients. Then we need to talk about the food groups as a basic concept. We know that we take food from animal origin foods and also plant origin food, and we have a food-based dietary guidelines recommended for Sri Lankans, and in that food-based guideline we have the recommended food groups for healthy eating, and we'll go into those food groups. They are classified as food groups depending on their biological and nutritional properties. For example, if they are grains, they are collected into one group, fruits in one group and vegetables in one group, but cereals and starchy foods depending on their content of carbohydrates. Likewise, we have food groups identified for Sri Lankans to have daily in our diet. Those dietary guidelines for healthy eating gives food groups, and not only the food groups but also the recommended amounts to take to the each food group and serving sizes for the daily consumption. And these dietary recommendations are made using foods not using nutrients because they give different nutrients to us, and in one food contains so many nutrients. So we can, it is easy to talk about the food rather than the nutrients. There are 6 food groups identified for Sri Lankans, and one is the first food group is the cereal and starchy food, which contains all the grains and also yams, which we eat, and jackfruit and breadfruit like starchy fruits also comes to this group, and vegetables and green leaves are in another group, second group, and protein containing pulses, fish, egg and lean meat are recommended for in third group. And those are what we usually serve into our plates. And the 3 food groups, fruits we take as a snack, and fresh milk or the fermented products like curd or yogurt we can take as also as a snack, and nuts and oily seeds and oils is another food group, and nuts and oil seeds also we can take as snacks. Now we have to see that what are the servings, how can we serve our plates every day with food from those food groups for a healthy eating. And first food group we say cereals and starchy food, and you can see that servings per day is 7 to 13. There's a range. 7 is for the sedentary persons, sedentary adult people, and 13 is for highly active people. And what is the size of the serving also given in that. Size of the serving is half a cup, and we know that 7 servings means 3.5 cups of cereals and starchy foods can be taken for the sedentary persons, and 6.5 cups of cereals and starchy food daily can be taken by highly active persons. And the same next food group is vegetables and green leaves. We need to have at least 4 servings of vegetables every day. That is, 1 serving is half a cup, or the 3 tablespoons of vegetables is 1 serving. That means 12 tablespoons of vegetables actually we need to have, which is very much lacking in our diets. So that is why our immunity and most of the micronutrients are deficient in our diets. And also with the vegetables, we need to have at least 1 serving of green leaves per day, that is half a cup or the 3 tablespoons of green leaves. And when we talk about the pulses, fish, egg and lean meat or the protein sources in our diet, we need to get plant proteins and animal proteins. Plant proteins, if take, we need to get 3 to 4 servings. That means 1.5 to 2 cups, or that is 200 milliliters cups, or 9 to 12 tablespoons of pulses per day. And animal proteins we need to take 2 to 4. That is again the range for the sedentary and highly active people, and 1 serving is 30 grams. That means sedentary person has to take fish or lean meat 60 grams. And when we talk about the size of that 30 gram is 2 boxes of matches, small boxes of matches. The size of 2 boxes of matches is the 30 gram of animal proteins, fish and lean meat. And even adolescents can take 1 egg per day, and any healthy adult can take 1 egg per day unless doctors have recommended them to limit it. And fruit, when we talk about the fruits, we need to have 2 to 3 fruits a day, that is small fruit, or 100 grams of fruit, that one serving is that, and we need to take accordingly. And fresh milk and its fermented products like curds and yogurt. Here we talk about the fresh milk, that is fresh liquid milk, not the milk powder. We can take depending on 1 to 2 servings. Usually adolescents need more calcium, so they can take 2 fresh milk servings, or the 200 milliliters cup per day, because they need more calcium. But anyway, we need to limit that, because milk contains, as I said earlier, more saturated fats, and it is heart unhealthy if we take more. So, and nuts and oily seeds, we need to have at least 2 tablespoons, or the 30 grams per day. And if we take 1 handful of nuts per day, that will give adequate amount of unsaturated fats for us. And here we have given cereals and starchy foods and different food we take, and their 1 serving sizes, how much the 1 serving size. And as I explained earlier, we need to think about how much we can take from those. And vegetables also we have given as 3 groups: green or other non-root vegetables, root vegetables, and green leaf vegetables. And serving size also, each and every group we have explained here. And next food group is pulses, fish, and we talked about in general how much we have to, and depending on the commonly taken food, we have given the 1 serving sizes, size of the 1 serving. And also fruits. There are 2 types of fruit which give low amounts of carbs, or the carbohydrates, and medium amounts of carbohydrates. And accordingly serving size differs, that low carb ones, and also fresh milk and its fermented products, and nuts and oily seeds, we talked about the number of serving sizes and how much is the 1 serving size. According to the food items, commonly used food items, we have mentioned 1 serving size, how much 1 serving size is equal to. And we know that for adolescents and youth, they need more calcium to grow and for their bones. So 2 servings of milk, or that is 200 milliliters per day, or its fermented product like a cup of curd, or the yogurt, or 30 gram cheese can be consumed. And if it is better to avoid those saturated milk with saturated fat, and in that case they have to fulfill their calcium requirement, so they can take calcium rich green leaves like katuru murunga, tampala murunga, pumpkin leaves, beet leaves, such green leaves. 3 serves, at least 3 serves per week if they do not take milk, and calcium rich spreads 2 serves per week. That is the recommendation for adolescents and youth, to avoid milk with saturated fat. To obtain healthy fats, they should take nuts and oily seeds every day, including especially sesame, which gives enough calcium too. Now we are moving on to the planning a balanced diet. And what is the balanced diet? First of all, we need to know that is we need to eat all food groups, including all food groups, into our daily diet, daily meals in recommended quantities. So that is the balanced diet. That means we told you about the 6 food groups, and all 6 food groups has to be there in our daily meals. In at least one of the meals, all food groups, some food groups has to be there, and during the day we need to take variety of food from all food groups in recommended quantities, and that is because different food groups gives different nutrients for our maintenance of our life. So, because of that we can have variation within the food group, add various nutrients to our diet, and also follow the healthy dietary pattern throughout the life course. Otherwise, not only during the adolescence and youth, throughout the life course we need to get used to that dietary pattern, and we will be end up with a healthy life. And how to plan a balanced meal? First, we need to think how we serve into our plates. Starting from the vegetables and green leaf, I suggest that because it is easy to have more vegetables and fruits served into our plate. So, fill the 1/3 of the plate, approximately 30% of the plate with at least 2 vegetables and a green leafy vegetable. Then after that we fill with the plate with the animal and plant proteins, and here one thing is missing, plant proteins. We need to add that, fill 1/3 of the plate 30% with animal proteins and plant proteins, that is pulses. So, the balance we can fill with rice or any other cereals with sometimes we eat boiled or curries of yams and some starchy fruits like jackfruit and breadfruit. That should come into the balance of the plate. And then we said that 55% of the total energy intake we take from carbohydrates, even though it is you see it is less according to the plate we serve, but we get those carbohydrates from pulses too. Pulses have carbohydrates and proteins, so that would be enough for the for a meal. And in between or after the meals we can consume fruit, or as a snack we can consume, and water, as I said earlier, is very necessary for us. And later we'll when we explain the food based dietary guidelines, I will give how much to drink water every day. And these are the recommendations given in food based dietary guidelines for Sri Lankans. As I said earlier, we need to think about the food, not about the nutrient when we eat our meals. So, first recommendation is to add color to your daily meals, balancing the correct amounts, which we have already explained. And we know that to add color means it should be like a rainbow. It gives a pleasant appearance and also increase your appetite. Not only that, and variety to your daily meals, giving various nutrients, adding various nutrients in the day. So, we need to select food different flavors, different smells, texture and colors to eat variety of food every day, and that also gives us a pleasant feeling. So, the next our next recommendation is eat parboiled or less polished rice, whole grains and their products instead of refined grains and their products, because we know that first food group is cereals and starchy food, and when we eat cereals, we need to eat at least half of the grains we eat for the day with whole grains, and when we eat rice, we need to eat parboiled rice more, because that in the bran of the rice we get a lot of nutrients such as vitamins, minerals and fiber, and those vitamins, mineral and fiber is when the rice is steamed, it goes in to the intestine and that doesn't wash off. So, all these nutrients stays in the rice. So, because of that we need to eat more parboiled rice and also less polished rice. And when we talk about other grains also like wheat and other grains, we need to think about that and to eat whole grains instead of refining them. And that means eat less white bread and refined wheat flour preparations and have whole grain preparations. All cereals and starchy foods, as I said earlier, when we serve our plate, it should be less than half of the plate or close to 1/3 of the plate. And next, food-based dietary guideline recommendation for healthy eating is eat at least 2 vegetables, 1 green leafy vegetable and 2 fruits daily. That is, if we eat 2 vegetables and 1 green leafy vegetables and 2 fruits in recommended amounts, it give altogether we say 5 portions of vegetables and fruits, that is about 400 grams. For a daily recommendation is 400 grams of fruits and vegetables to prevent and control the non-communicable diseases, major non-communicable diseases such as diabetes mellitus, hypertension and metabolic syndrome. So, we need to take at least 6 tablespoons from 2 different vegetables, 3 tablespoons from green leafy vegetable and 2 fruits daily to achieve that requirement. And it ensures the adequate daily intake of dietary fiber, which is good for the bowel health and prevents the most of the cancers. And we know that there are starchy roots like carrot, beet, radish, no-col, and things like starchy roots. Those are vegetables we call, but potatoes and sweet potatoes and cassava and other starchy roots are not classified under the vegetables. As they provide carbohydrates, you should include them in the portion of the carbohydrates of the cereals and starchy foods. And talking about the protein sources and dietary recommendations for protein sources is add fish, egg or lean meat together with pulses in each meal. We know that Sri Lanka, most of the time, in most of the meals we add dal, that is a pulse. So, it is easy for us to have pulses in each meal, and we need to add some animal sources also, as they are more quality, gives more quality protein. So, that we need to give, if we are a vegetarian and are not taking any animal proteins, have to take a variety of pulses during the day or a mixture of pulses in each meal. So, that will give essential nutrients, essential amino acids in different quantities, and we get the necessary requirement of proteins. And when we take meat, we have to it is better to replace fatty meat and processed meat like sausages or the bacon, those things, with beans, legumes, lentils, fish, poultry and lean meat to avoid adverse health consequences. As I said earlier, that they contain more saturated fat and other unhealthy nutrients. So, adolescents and also healthy adults, healthy youth can have one egg a day if they are healthy. And next recommendation is about the 5th food group, about milk. Earlier also I said that we need to have fresh liquid milk rather than having sugar sweetened or the ultra processed preparations such as milk powder and thing. So we need to have fresh milk, fresh liquid milk or its fermented products, because fermentation process itself provide us healthy gut flora. So we will be free of the bowel diseases or the diarrheal diseases. So we need to consume one serving of fresh milk or its fermented products like curd or yogurts a day, and that is adequate for a person every day. But for adolescents, they can take 2 servings as they need more calcium if they do not get enough the green leaves or spreads, as I explained earlier. Fermented fresh milk products such as curd, yogurt are effective against diarrhea and not only diarrhea, but it modulates immune regulations, strengthening our immune system and preventing diseases. Also, it prevents this milk has more calcium and it prevents osteoporosis in later life. And fish milk and its fermented dairy products are healthy options over the sugar sweetened beverages, especially when school children or adolescents, they need more water and beverages, and they used to drink soft drinks, flavored water, fruit drinks, cordials and fizzy drinks. Those things have more sugar, and later in life they will get non-communicable diseases like diabetes mellitus and metabolic syndrome. So it is better to replace it with the milk occasionally, and they can take about 200 milliliters if they are adolescents. And to take more unsaturated fats, I already said that eat a handful of nuts or oily seeds daily gives adequate amounts of unsaturated fats, and nuts such as peanuts, cashew, as well as oily seeds such as gingerly, pumpkin seeds give healthy fats, which increases high density cholesterols or the good cholesterol. So we need to they are preferable than the saturated fat found in fatty meat, butter, palm and coconut oil, or creams and cheese and ghee. Unsaturated fatty acid, as I said, increases good cholesterols and lowers bad cholesterol or LDL. Daily requirement of unsaturated fatty acid can be made with the handful of nuts and oily seeds, and that is on average 15 grams. And we talked about what we have to eat to have a balanced diet. Now we are talking about what to limit. When that dietary habits or dietary proper good healthy dietary patterns are adapted, we need to limit salty food, such as we know that commercially prepared food has lot of salt or the sodium, and also we need to limit adding salt to food, especially when preparing rice, not to add salt to rice. Without rice we can prepare, without salt we can prepare rice always. And we need to limit intake of added salt, or the salt contains sodium less than added salt to less than 5 gram, or the 1 teaspoon per person per day. And at the table also we need to limit adding salt. Then other thing is, we know that adequate amounts of salt is found in our food, not only the plant food, even in animal food we have adequate amounts. So, we do not have to add salt into our meals, but processed food like fish, canned fish and meats, sausages and things, they have more salt. So, it is preferred to have fresh fish, poultry and meat rather than having processed ones. And to reduce the intake of salt, because if you are used to eat more salt, you have to do the gradual reduction of intake of salt, otherwise all of a sudden we can't stop or limit our salt intake. And the other things to limit is sugary drinks, biscuits, cakes, sweets and sweeteners. All these has so many large amounts of sugar, which is not good for our health, and limiting adding sugar to when we prepare food and beverages also we need to do limit consumption of sugar to 6 teaspoons per day is per person per day is the recommended amount, but it is better to have even less. So, when we add sugar to our food, it is we do not feel a natural taste of food, and therefore minimize the consumption of added sugar and limit it to 30 grams or the 6 teaspoons per person per day as in. And when we buy foods, we need to read the labels of canned or packaged food for sugar content. Food marketed as sugar free is not always calorie free and can reduce sugar intake by reducing added sugar gradually, as I said for salt. And next recommendation, earlier also I said that water is essential for us, and water is the healthiest drink we have, and we need to drink at least 8 to 10 glasses or 1.5 to 2 liters throughout the day, and that will hydrate and make you healthy. And requirement of fluid, we can calculate by dividing your body weight by 30, you get the requirement of fluid per day. If you are 70 kilograms and it divides by 75 and divides by 30, that is 2.5 liters you need. This requirement increases in warm climates, and when you have fever or the diarrheal diseases, and when you have exercise or you are physically active, at that moment you need more than the usual required amount. And if you have had enough water for the day, you won't feel thirst and should pass the colorless urine. That is how we see whether we had enough water for the day. And when you deliver the lecture as an activity of this session, you can get participants' suggestions for healthy eating for adolescents and discuss it with them. And what are the food and nutrients to increase for adolescents and youth? Those are whole grains, vegetables and fruits, which gives vitamins, minerals and fiber, and more protein sources from seafood, eggs, lean meat, and also from pulses and legumes. And they have to limit some foods like refined grains and products, and sodium and foods high in salt, unhealthy fats like food containing saturated fats and trans fats, foods and beverages with high sugar content, and processed and ultra processed foods, which I explained Next, then point to consider when talking about the nutrition among adolescents and youth. They have to eat, we can eat seasonal fruits and vegetables more, not the commonly consumed fruits and vegetables, because nature gives us healthy mix of nutrients in those seasonal fruits and vegetables. And we are actually, Sri Lanka is fortunate to have a lot of fruits and vegetables, but we do not consume most of the things which are rich in nutrients. So, we need to think about that and include fish in your daily diet, preferably oily fish like tuna, herring, sardines and mackerels, to get more omega 3 fatty acids, to heart healthy omega 3 fatty acids, and to some extent omega 6 fatty acids. And adolescents and youth, they like to have barbecues, grilled food and pan fried food, which cook meat or other food over a direct flame, and they produce carcinogenic compounds when exposed to high temperatures. So, better to avoid, because in later life they can get cancers. And prefer fresh milk and its fermented products over ultra processed milk products like sugary drinking yogurts, then milk products, and also powdered milk. And reduce consumption of total fat to less than 30% of total energy intake to prevent weight gain, unhealthy weight gain and risk of non-communicable diseases. And saturated fats to less than 10% of total energy intake, and industrial trans fats to less than 1% of total energy intake. And apart from that, free sugars are all sugars that contain in the sugary drinks and foods. Also in some naturally, they are naturally present in honey, syrups and fruit juices and fruit juice concentrates. So, they contribute to decay, unhealthy weight gain and non-communicable diseases. Limit those free sugars and consumption of sweetened and colored and flavored milk drinks, yogurts and yogurt drinks, as well as cakes, biscuits and other bakery products and fried food, as they contain high amounts of trans fats. And check food labels to get the lowest percentage of salt, sugar and fat in packaged food, and always aim for a green or amber labels. And while we do that, we have to check for other additives. Apart from all these recommendations, we need to think about the what kind of food we have to eat when we plan a balanced diet. We need to eat clean and safe food which are free from bacterial or fungal contamination, chemical and physical contamination, and which can lead to deterioration or the spoilage of food. And cleanliness is one of the most important aspects which affects the health and nutrition of persons. And pay attention to cleanliness of food and food safety from purchasing to storing, preparation and even during the serving of food. And we need to think that we have considered everything, but if we eat food from outside, most of the time we won't get fresh food produced. So, it is better to eat home cooked food prepared with fresh produce as much as possible, and limit bottled, canned or packaged processed food and ultra processed foods. All foods that are natural are unprocessed or minimally processed, and usually home cooked food are processed with condiments or spices, and that is minimally processed. We cut them and chop them and minimally process them. And unhealthy or minimally processed food has not much sugar, salt and fat. Processed food has salt, sugar and fat, unlike unprocessed or minimally processed one, and sometimes some additives which we add at the kitchen. But ultra processed on the other hand have more additives than those used in the kitchen, like salt, sugar, fat or the vinegars like that, and they usually have more than 5 food additives that including preservatives, antioxidants, stabilizers, dyes and things so on, to have to increase the shelf life and the flavor, to give the flavor. So, because of that, always read labels of packaged foods and for the nutrient value of the food and the expiry dates. We need to have that habit, and solid and semi-solid processed food should bear a label to show the levels of sugar, salt and fat levels according to the colors, and those logos should display in the main panel of the packet, and color coding of beverages are only for the sugar content, and we need to read that and get more green labels and or else amber labels into some extent, and avoid or limit red labels. Now, we will see what are the unhealthy diets and their consequences. So, in this session, you can ask your participants to identify unhealthy foods and dietary habits, and describe what are the processed and ultra processed food and also junk food. Processed and ultra processed food. Processed food, we talked about, there are 2 or 3 ingredients which are used in kitchens. Usually that process is pickling or the bread or making bread and cheese, and processing include various preservation or cooking methods. Ultra processed, then there are 5 or more ingredients in those things, usually industrial preparations, and most of the additives are not used in the kitchen, and most of the time original raw material cannot be recognized in the ultra processed food. If we say that milk and milk powder, we can't see the original raw material in milk powder, and here in this picture have shown salamis. Also they do not show that any meat there, and that original raw materials cannot be recognized. Yeah. We were talking about processed food and adverse health effects, and let us see what they are. Usually added fat, especially unhealthy trans fats and saturated fats, are causing cardiovascular problems and also cancer, and added salt increases the blood pressure among those who have high blood pressure, and also added sugar causes obesity and diabetes, type 2 diabetes mellitus, and cardiovascular problems and the metabolic syndrome. So, preservatives to prevent microbiological spoilage causes food allergies, toxicity and certain cancers. So, likewise, preservatives to prevent rancidity of fats and coloring also causes food allergies and toxicity, and some coloring causes cancers. That is why we have the E numbers recommended for coloring and food additives, and we need to identify them, what are the recommended coloring and additives, and even though they are recommended, we need to limit as much as possible. And flavor enhancers like monosodium glutamate, they also causes food allergies and toxicity, and however that monosodium glutamate is not proven as unsafe, but has high sodium content, and should be avoided or limit as much as possible. And there are texture improving modified starches in processed and ultra processed food, and they cause food allergies and toxicity. But some processed and ultra processed food are fortified with vitamins and micronutrients. We always hear about the margarines and other milk products that they are fortified with minerals and micronutrients. As they are supplements, no adverse effects if taken more than not more than the recommended amounts, but some can cause other unhealthy effects. So we need to consider those things when we plan a diet. And we always call about the junk food and fast food, and junk food is usually it's an informal term to describe foods with limited nutrient value, but they contain more calories. Those are we call empty calories because high amounts of calories with low nutrient properties. Micronutrients and proteins, example deep fried food and also sweets and confectionaries. Those are the things we take as junk food, and also apart from that, carbonated and sweetened beverages with high amounts of sugar. And when you deliver the lecture for adolescents or youth, then you can or your clients, you can ask them to describe the effects of unhealthy food and then discuss about them. Effects of consuming an unhealthy diet is when we increases the total dietary fat or alcohol or the smoked or the direct those which are exposed to direct flame, those meats, and also nitrate cured meat products like sausages, ham, bacon. All these things can cause if you consume them regularly, that they can cause cancers such as colon cancers, breast cancers, esophageal and endometrial cancers, and also kidney cancers. And when your diet is lacking calcium, you may get osteoporosis in the later life, and due to reduced bone density. And inadequate intake of proteins and micronutrients reduces your immunity, and you are more prone to get communicable diseases or the infections. So we need to think about that and take more proteins, especially from unhealthy diet. If we usually, when we talk about the micronutrients, we need to think about the vitamin D, which is more important for our immune system. And if we don't get it from our diet, even though we need to expose to the sunlight at least 15 minutes between 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at this time of the day, then we can, vitamin D is produced in our body. So vitamin D is very important to build up, strengthen our immune system. And lack of antioxidants, which fight with the free radicals or the harmful substances produced in our body, causes reduced brain function in old age, and they may get dementia at the later life. So antioxidants are present in colorful vegetables and fruits. So we need to take them variety of fruits and vegetables in our diets. And micronutrient deficiencies, as I said earlier, causes many nutritional deficiencies, which we call as hidden hunger. And when we take micronutrient rich fruits and vegetables, it acts like magic wands and reduces those nutritional deficiencies. and excess amounts of carbohydrates and unhealthy fats causes non-communicable diseases and also also osteoarthritis and non-communicable disease in the obesity and type 2 diabetes, and also cancers and some respiratory problems. In this session, you can with your participants, you can identify the benefits of the healthy diet and also factors that violate good eating habits. So, moving on to the factors affecting good eating habits, there are so many factors in our society which affect the good eating habits. There are religious beliefs, some are vegetarian, some are non-veg, and some do not eat meat, some do not eat and some and other animal proteins. Such things are there. Then poor knowledge on nutrition also causes poor eating patterns, and health beliefs like something some food they think it is cold or the heaty something, those are also affecting eating patterns of the family or the community, and income levels, educational levels, and the socio-economic structure itself also causes poor eating patterns and physiological makeups. So, cultural background and the community influences also causes affecting dietary habits, and most of the advertisement and unethical marketing of unhealthy food and easy access to unhealthy food, while unavailability of health food also affects dietary habits, good dietary habits. And we need to promote healthy diet among adolescent and youth. For that, we need policies and programs in educational institutions and workplaces to encourage to adapt and maintain healthy diet, especially healthy canteen policies in educational institutions and workplaces. Educating children, adolescent and youth about the nutrition and health and dietary practices is a must. When they know about it, they may adapt good dietary habits or the healthy dietary habits, with encouraging them to learn cooking and schools and other educational institutions, and making it a practice to check food labels, as I explained earlier, and reduce also as the society or the government, we need to reduce access and marketing of promotion of unhealthy food, and availability of healthy food choices should be increased. And then to sustain those dietary patterns forever, to change their behaviors and make it a habit to have a healthy eating is can be achieved in that way. And in a small group session, you can divide participants into 4 or 5 small groups and get each group to prepare 5 small groups, and ask them to prepare meal plan for one of the following for adolescents: breakfast, 3 main meals, and morning and evening snacks. Those are the 5 meal plans you ask, and then discuss whether they are healthy or not. And when we talk about the nutritional assessment, unlike our adult body mass index calculation, it is different interpretation. We have 5 to 19 years, that is among adolescents, and we have gender specific standard charts adopted from the WHO, and for that those are different for girls and boys, and we take overweight as more than 1 standard deviation that is overweight in pink color, and equivalent to BMI of 25 kilogram per square meter at 19 years or for the adults, and obesity in purple color equivalent to BMI of 30 kilogram per square meter and for adults, and thinness is -2 standard deviation and in orange color, and severe thinness in red color that is -3 SD for in this chart. We have to interpret with these charts for the adolescents, but for adults and youth over 19 years so we can calculate BMI by dividing body weight in kilogram divided by height in meter squared. So we get the amount BMI, and we can classify if it is below 18 kilogram per square meter as underweight. Normal range is 18.5 to 24.9 kilogram per square meter, but here from 23 to 24.9 we need to act to prevent NCD and because it is an increased risk for overweight, and overweight is 25 to 29.9 kilogram per square meter, and obesity is more than 30 kilogram per square meter. That is how we interpret our body mass index for adults and youth. And there are 3 case scenarios in the module, like Amal with normal BMI express, he is overweight to public health midwife, public health inspector identified Ruini as obese, and Harshini come to medical officer of health to ask him for treatment for thinness. Those we have to discuss with them how they are going to manage these cases, and let know about these cases to discuss with their peers, and talk about the womb to tomb concept or vicious cycle of the malnutrition which goes from adolescence to the next generation and their adult life. And when in summary, as healthy diet helps protect against malnutrition in its all forms, we have and also to prevent and control non-communicable diseases including diabetes, heart diseases, stroke and cancer. An unhealthy diet and lack of physical activity are leading to health hazards, and also healthy dietary practices start in early life when we ask to breastfeed, and breastfeeding improves the growth and development and also not only the cognitive development and long term health, it helps to have long term health benefits, reducing the overweight and obesity and other non-communicable diseases in later life. And energy intake or the calories should be in balance with energy expenditure, as I explained. Evidence also indicate that not to exceed fat for more than 30% of the total energy intake to avoid unhealthy weight gain, and we need to limit saturated fats and increase unsaturated fats, and limit trans fats to industrial trans fat to the minimum, and limiting intake of free sugars to less than 5% of the total energy is a part of a healthy diet, and also limiting salt intake less than 5 gram per person per day also helps to prevent and control hypertension and reduce the risk of heart disease and cerebrovascular accidents or the strokes in adult populations. So, that is the end of this presentation, and I hope that you all can make aware our adolescents and youth on nutrition and the healthy eating. Thank you.